Human beings like us have been on this earth for 100,000 years. For the first 90,000 years, we were hunter-gatherers. We basically spent our days hunting and gathering and living in caves. About 10,000 years ago, something dramatic happened and all this changed. We moved out of our caves and started settling houses. We grew our own food. Historians like to call this period the Agricultural Revolution. The Agricultural Revolution started with humans domesticating barley. And up until recently, we believed that we domesticated barley because we wanted to make bread. Now we know it's not true. We domesticated barley to make beer. We started making beer 9,000 BC. That's 3,000 years before anyone was ever making bread. And we started settling in this part of the world. But I'm not going to talk about human history and human civilization. What I want to share with you is this passion for beer. I've been in love with food ever since I can remember. And kind of beer has been this extension to food. And if you can just imagine this scene, back in July 2006, when the Israelis were bombing us, I was sitting on my balcony in Mono. There was no electricity. I had my shirt off. It was hot. The bombs were landing on Shia. The house was shaking madly. And I had just gotten a book 3 days before the war called Beer School. Beer School is the autobiography of Steve Hindy, the guy who started Brooklyn Brewery. Steve Hindy happened to be also a journalist for Associated Press during the Civil War in the 1980s in Lebanon. So I opened this book, first page, first sentence, first paragraph, and it said something along the lines of, I woke up to the sounds of bombs exploding outside my Hotel Alexandra in Al-Shafi'i. Now remember, this is a beer book. And it's one of those moments where you think the world comes together for a reason. So I called all my friends and I said, let's brew some beer. Of course. We didn't know much about beer. The first few times, it turned out horrible. It was pretty green, disgusting, it smelled bad. But we had done it with so much passion, we still drank that stuff. From that failure, I think, we got further into beer research, and we started discovering what an interesting, complex, sophisticated beverage this is. It's a rich, rich ingredient within our history. Now remember, beer started with human civilization and has accompanied us all across. And every little part of human history can be found in beer. Take an English porter, for example. This beer was originally brewed in London during the Industrial Revolution. Now, back then, water was not safe. People threw their waste into the rivers. There was no sewage. So water was poisonous. People drank beer. And in English pubs, below the taps, you had a spill tray. Today, whatever excess beer spills into these things, we dump into the sewage. Back then, it was a harsh period. They would pour this extra beer into a glass and sell it cheaper. And the people who would buy this beer were the porters of London. Those were the poorest of the poor. And that's where you get the name porter. And porter is not a unique beer. Every other style of beer reflects some part of our history and culture. Once you realize how rich this history is and how diverse this flavor is, and how interesting this beer is, beer is like a kaleidoscope. You open a door and there are 10 others behind it. You open another door and there are hundreds of others behind it. So once you start digging deeper and deeper into this, you realize, well, since it's got such an array of flavors and a contrast and a diversity, it's the best accompaniment for food. So much so, the chief sommelier of GQ magazine, who's an award winner, a few issues ago declared his love for beer. And it's a very healthy drink. I'm not supposed to say that, but the American Dietetics Association recommends a regular, moderate intake of beer in your life. From that richness, you wonder, why has beer been commoditized? Why are we being sold an adult soft drink? And the answer is quite simple. It's marketing, marketing, marketing. We've been marketed to with intangible concepts such as cool, refreshing. What do any of these mean? Big beer companies, instead of spending time to talk about the attributes of their product, are telling us to consume with no reference to the beer itself. And that's led to a lot of misconceptions in our life, 3 of which really tick me off personally. Most people think drinking that out of a transparent or a green bottle is cool and refreshing. Today we know that beer is sensitive to light. And the only glass that can protect beer from light is the brown glass. Beer that has been struck by light skunks. Its aroma goes off. And I'm sure a lot of you will attest to this. Whenever a beer goes slightly warm, we use an expression. When this started off, there was a shelf full of brown bottles, and the way to differentiate yourself, differentiate your product, was to change the color of the glass. But having done that and realized later that this is the wrong thing, companies did not retract and do the right thing. Instead, they marketed further. So now we have a bad aroma in the bottle. What do? We recommend people drink out of a bottle. My second misconception that ticks me off. We drink out of a bottle. You never drink wine out of a bottle. You never drink anything out of a bottle. And the reason you don't drink anything out of a bottle is 2/3 of your taste is your smell. 90% of people, humans, like you and I, if you close their nose, cannot differentiate coffee from tea. So now we've taken care of the aroma. Our third misconception, we drink beer ice cold. Your mouth becomes numb. Your palate is diluted below 6 degrees centigrade. You don't drink or eat anything that cold. Why have they done this? Because it's the easy route. It's much more difficult to make a sweet beer, because some people like sweet, some people don't like sweet. If you make a bitter beer, some people like bitter, some people don't like bitter. If you wanted to make a beer for everybody, you make something with no flavor, no aroma, the least common denominator. Each one of you is unique. Each one of you has his own taste, dresses differently, and therefore a lot of people come up to me and say, I don't like beer. Well, it's because you haven't had the right beer. There is a beer for everybody out there. Now, to me, as a Lebanese, having seen the rich history of beer, I find it ironic that as Lebanese, we're very proud of inventing the alphabet. We're very proud of inventing clothes dye, transparent glass. And somehow in our history, our greatest contribution to civilization got forgotten: beer. Cheers.